Inshallah, before we begin, we mentioned this on the first night actually, and maybe a few nights after that, a few weeks after that. We know that Friday is a very special day for us as the Shia. It's known to be the day when our awaited Savior would, inshallah, one day return to us physically, I guess you could say. And in order to prepare ourselves for that, we have this Dua-E-Kumayl. One purpose of it is that we have this Dua-E-Kumayl on Thursday night to almost do hisab, to almost think about and reflect over what we've done in this last week. Have we got closer to Allah? Have we done things that have taken us further away? And with that in mind, this is kind of an amazing opportunity every Thursday that we're able to review it. And Allah gives us the opportunity at any point, but especially through this dua, to ask for that forgiveness if we've done wrong. And sometimes if we've done that wrong, it's an opportunity to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greatness and to realize still that probably I've wronged him in that week, and now I'm remembering how I've wronged him. But once we acknowledge it, and once we approach Allah in such a humble, lowly state, we're then able to ask him for that forgiveness and recognize that he's so quick in wanting to help us again, and to bring us back to our feet, and that we can regain that relationship that we once had with him. So on this kind of night, as I've said before, take it as like your 25 minutes, your 20 minutes of switch off time, right? You can, as you want during the lecture, but these are the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen that were narrated through to his companion Kumayl ibn Ziyad. So just let yourself attach to these and just focus on this night, sit wherever you want, do whatever it is that helps you get into the mindset, if it's airplane mode on your phone, whatever it is. Just, this is for you to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that inshallah tomorrow morning, if it is the day that our awaited Savior is here, he sees us in a pure way, he sees us as a friend, he sees us as a supporter, and not as an enemy. And even if not as an enemy, not as someone that he doesn't want to be around, because we carry the sort of burdens of sins that he doesn't want to associate himself with. So inshallah, with that in mind, we begin with a salawat that softens our heart in honor of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Aflaha man salla ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء، وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء، وخضع لها كل شيء، وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي ظلمت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس, call out unto Allah. يا نور يا قدوس, يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام,
اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم أسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء أقمته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من فناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلاي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها وبطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما علمته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي، وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، أسأل كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي جريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك، وخالفت بعد أوامرك، فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لاجئ مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شدي وفاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي، يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني الابتداء كرمك والسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذب بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك، هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت، أو تبعد من أدنيت، أو تشرد من آويت، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا، وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثوه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته، فكيف احتمال لبلاء الآخرة وجميل الوقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي، فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين، يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته، فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك، أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك، فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهل هذا جيج العاملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا ضياف المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي، فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك، أم كيف تؤلمه النار فضلك ورحمتك. أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه. أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه. أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه. أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربه. أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها. هيهات ما ذلك الذن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبع لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلال معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما. لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين. وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه يجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة رجعت الدعاء كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبت وكل قبيح أسررت وكل جهل عملت كتمته وأعلنت أخفيته أو أظهرت وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزل أو إحسان تفضل أو بر تنشر أو رزق تبسط أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستر. Everyone together يا ربي يا ربي يا رب from your hearts يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقر وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحق قدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد ومن كادني فكد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعلني لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلي عفرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد من قرأ سورة مباركة الفاتحة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
just going to take a 5-minute break and inshallah do the discussion cycle. We'll start in 5 minutes time at 8:20. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala alihi.
Doesn't need to be one. Whatever takes this for you guys. If it's just gonna hit, that's perfect. Thank you. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. Especially from the men, when we ask for a salawat, the Holy Prophet has amazing ahadith about how powerful the salawat is and how to vocalize it so beautiful and beautiful for our souls. So inshallah, in the Hussaini mission, we can do a Hussaini salawat. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Firstly, my apologies for being late today. I know it was 9 minutes or 10 minutes, but I'm very sorry for that delay. Thank you for your patience with that. Given the energy levels, I'm worried about today's topic. Because usually you can judge the energy level from the salawat, and I think this is
I know I said last week's one was going to be difficult. This one is particularly difficult. So it's going to be a very tricky, to be honest, discussion. We'll use the word tricky. It's going to need a different set of lenses again, a different set of glasses than what we've been looking for maybe for the past 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, however long we've been around for. So it will require a lot of focus, but it's probably one of the most critical conversations, as we saw from the two sisters that asked last week, why is it that we face evil if God is just? It's this classic atheist argument that has been completely echoed around our world here in the UK especially, and more broader than that as well, but especially here more recently. So this is one of those that when we said in the first week, we're doing this investment in our principles, because if we invest in the foundation, any of these knocks that come will not knock us over like perhaps they would have done a few weeks ago if these sessions have been beneficial. But this is one of those knocks that is quite strong, that many people have unfortunately from our community faltered on, and has made them fall at points. And that fall may not be as drastic as you've fallen off a cliff and your bones are broken, but it can be as subtle as you've fallen off and now you're hanging on by the final threads. You haven't felt any pain yet, but you're hanging on. You don't know it yet, and then the next fall could be the most drastic one, and you struggle to come back from there. So this topic is extremely critical for us to try and understand. I've put a lot of, I've put time into this. Let's not say a lot. I don't want to overemphasize. So inshallah, with your engagement and with your participation, and I'm going to call upon your participation actually throughout. Inshallah, we can learn together and get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we can begin therefore with the salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
So last week, just to quickly recap, we discussed the introduction into adala, the second of our usul, and we were saying that adala is critical. And we were trying to justify why is adala chosen, this justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be within the usul rather than any of his other incredible traits, like his mercy, like his greatness. Surely we could have included the greatness of Allah in the usul. Surely we could have included his mercy, his love, his forgiveness. But instead we realized and understood that his justice, his adala, is necessary to be there because all of his other traits require adala in order to be carried out correctly. His mercy needs to be in the right place. The right place is through it being through a lens of adala. We said that adala is not just justice, it's putting something in its rightful place. And zulm, oppression, is putting something outside of its rightful place. I have a book, I leave it on the floor, I'm doing zulm. I have a book, I put it on the shelf, I'm being adil. I take Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and I say you cannot leave this country, I'm doing zulm. I'm putting them out of their rightful place. I put Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam in the position in my life where they should be, in the position of governorship where they should be, even though this is something decreed by Allah and I'm just a materialistic side to it, but theoretically, we accept and we give our bay'ah to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam to say, you are our guides, you are our leaders. Then I'm not doing zulm, I'm being adil. You could try and say that we're probably still not doing enough, but I'm putting them in their rightful place. And that's why we said the likes of prophethood, the likes of imam, the likes of qiyamah all depend on adala. And tawheed and adala are absolutely critical in our usul. The adala of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala boils down to, in one lens, his justice, putting things in the rightful place. And therefore the question came up, so if Allah is just, and if we can ascertain to some degree what is just and what is not just, then why is it that evil exists? Why is it that suffering takes place? Why is it that we see Daesh taking over a country and leaving so many of our brothers and sisters killed? Why is it that we see the Taliban in Afghanistan again taking over the country and leaving so many brothers and sisters in such difficult positions? Why in Bahrain? Why in Saudi? Why in Pakistan? Why in India? So many different countries. And even here, we're oppressed to some degree, but perhaps not in the same way as our brothers and sisters elsewhere. Why? If this God of yours is so just, is so correct, is so rightful, and if he's so powerful, why doesn't he just sort it all out? If that's in his ability, if that's in his power, in his might, and we say he's infinitely powerful, he's infinitely mighty, then why don't you just sort it out? What's the point in seeing everyone suffer? And inshallah, that's what we want to try and crack today. For reference, Ayatollah al-Nasr spends these next 3 chapters on this. So I've used some of his works on it. I would say, I'm not sure it was published maybe in the best way, these 3 chapters. It didn't
at least from my perspective, that like the line of thinking wasn't as clear cut as maybe I would have liked. Therefore, I've also used Ayatollah Sayyid Father Milani's works in Fruits of Contemplation, where he talks about why we're trialed with tests and tribulations, and he also then talks about the existence of evil and does it exist. And I've also used the works of Ayatollah Wahid as well, and also I consulted one of our teachers in Qom, who sent his latest essay on this, which we won't cover today, but just to say there's so much discussion around this, not because it's a new phenomenon. And that's why I want to mention this point. Not because it's a new phenomenon. This argument is not some revolutionary thinking that's come from nowhere. This argument has been around for decades. And it's just that we in the English-speaking world, and alhamdulillah has given you the tawfiq and us the tawfiq to learn this together, are now asking this question and being critical in our thinking and being like, okay, let's embrace these topics. But they've already been written. That's why the faith of Islam has remained so strong, because answers to this have existed for hundreds, for centuries. We're just now finding out about it. So inshallah, with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll be able to engage with this. So, let's try and get into it. We see around the world starvation, dehydration, abuse, corruption, natural disasters, poverty, all things that you and I, when we see on Sky News, when we see on BBC News, would typically coin as being evil, or unfair, or not right, or horrible, etc. And it can beg this question of why does evil exist? And as I mentioned, if we don't understand and think about this in the right way, it's going to really affect us. So what I ask you to do today is to really try and take steps back. So remove any of the common parlance that you would use to describe when you see Daesh wiping out a village, when you see a bomb going off in Pakistan at a Shia mosque or in an Afghan mosque in the last few weeks. I want you to stop for a moment and go, I'm not going to look through the same set of glasses that this country, this society has made me look through thus far. And start saying, why is there evil? Why is there this? Why is there that? I just want you to, for the exercise, and the same way that we did with Tawheed, we started from very first principles, right? We didn't come in by saying Allah. We said there's a concept, there's a calling from within. Similarly, I want you to come into this with a fresh and objective set of glasses, a brand new set that yet haven't got a prescription. And inshallah, during this, we're going to start to tweak the prescription. So we're going to start by trying to understand what is evil, this term that's being thrown around. Does it exist? How does it come about? And what is it that we actually see when we see these occurrences going on in the world, be that publicly or in homes? Because people have criticized and questioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his alleged injustice. And this extends to them attacking Adala directly, and then it goes on to attacking Tawheed directly, and then you've severed the usul of our faith. That's why I'm adding this huge disclaimer in this introduction. To start to understand this, we're going to take our first prescription test. This is our first green or red, which one's greener, which one's redder. We're going to do our first test on this, so time to engage. We're going to discuss man's relative judgment and his limited knowledge. Man's relative judgment and his limited knowledge. And I'm going to need your show of hands for this, for each question. Now, alhamdulillah, I can see each one of you, so I know you can all put your hands up, and that makes it a little bit more tough for you to hide, right? And I will ask you, if you haven't got your hand up, to put your hand up on one of these. I'm going to give you a set of scenarios, and I want you to tell me whether you see goodness or evil. And after you answer it, I'm going to add a little bit more, and you can tell me, is it goodness or evil? I'm going to add a bit more, goodness or evil. Is that clear? So I'll give you a context, I'll ask goodness, put your hand up. If you think you see evil, I'll then ask you, do you see evil? You put your hand up. And if you abstain, you leave. That's kind of the rule that we have, okay? So let's start with this. You see a teacher teaching a child how to read for the first time. Do you see goodness or evil? Goodness, hands up. Yeah? Okay, cool, amazing. Evil, no one put their hand, no one left their hand out, so we're good. Okay, so that one's clear for us, okay? You see a mother giving their child milk when they have been crying the whole night. Do you see goodness or evil? Goodness, hands up. Yes, yes, yes. My dear uncle, do you see goodness in that moment? He sees goodness. Amazing. Okay, everyone sees goodness. Okay, so we're in a simple state right now. Great. Let's get a bit more extreme. You see a man cross the road and die. Do you see goodness or evil? Goodness, put your hands up. No. Do you see evil? You see a man cross the road and he dies. Go on, why half?
Well, I mean, need more context to to be honest. Like, is he crossing the road on purpose? Like, is he being silly, or is he like, did he, go on a zebra crossing with the driver hit him on purpose?
Interesting.
Oh,
Okay. Did you guys hear that over here? Yeah? So, we're kind of getting to this point. Hold on, I can't make a judgment so quickly there. I need more context. Was he crossing the road? Did the driver, was he doing 50 miles per hour? Did he brake in time? Did the driver go after him? Did he run into the car? Like, what's the context? I need more information in order to make a judgment. Okay, interesting. Let's give you another context. You see a man cutting the leg off someone. Goodness or evil? Hands up if you see goodness. No? Hands up if you see evil. Yeah? Everyone sees evil? Yeah? Okay. You're not sure? How come?
What if it's the amputation?
Aha! There we go. What if it's an amputation, right? So what if the additional point I was then going to say is, okay, so this is a surgeon with a person on the operating table, and the guy's got a tumour in his calf. So the surgeon's saying, if I get rid of your calf and below in time, this won't spread to your upper body, into your lungs, into your heart, into your brain, and we can save your life. So again, we need a bit more information in order to make this judgment. What if I were to say to you now that you see two stars collide in the sky? Do you see goodness or do you see evil? Hands up if you see goodness. Hands up if you see evil. Now either all of you have fallen asleep, or you're like, well, this is a complicated one, or the mic's hurting your ears. It's one of the three options, right? So now you've got a situation where you're like, oh, two stars collide. Would that be good? Well, it could be good. That could be bad. I don't know, actually. So all of a sudden, we've gone from being the smart person, I was going to use a rude word there, but not quite rude anyway. You're going to be the smart person in the room. It's like, yeah, I can see goodness and evil in everything. I can decipher. And on the other side, well, actually, that one's a tough one. Remember last week, we said there was a group from the Ahl Sunnah who said we can't decipher between what is goodness and what is not goodness. And we said, no, we're the school that can have a good judgment at it, and there is a difference between goodness and not so goodness, right? We said there is the Holy Prophet who's done an exceptional job. He is deserving of going to heaven. It would be not right for him to go to hell. But we also said we don't always know everything. There is definitely a gap. There's a huge gap. Otherwise we would be God. So whilst there are some obvious things, there are some that are not so obvious. There are some that are quite complex. So what we learn from here is that man's relative judgment, man has relative judgment. Meaning what? Meaning that I can only compare on the scale of good and evil versus something else, and I compare the two. You're having your leg chopped off, that's terrible. Oh, but it's for a surgery, okay, that's better. I need to put it on a scale, and it tends one way or the other. But when I say two stars collide, I'm like, oh, I've never seen that one before. If I say to you the planets are turning on themselves, well, I've never seen that one before. I think physics would tell me it's a good thing, so I'm going to put it on the good side. Well, what if you say it's turning the wrong way at the wrong speed? You're like, oh yeah, actually, maybe I'm not sure of that. So all of a sudden, when the human is unable to put a specific scenario on the scale of what we deem to be goodness and evil from our understanding, from our experience, what happens? Our judgment starts to falter. It starts to fail. I haven't got anything to compare it against, so I panic. I don't know what to do now. And it illustrates to me that all of humankind has limited knowledge, which we've already established in the past few weeks. The only one that has unlimited knowledge, the only one that has anything unlimited, is the Creator, is the Infinite, is the Unlimited, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the only thing. But we learn here that we have limited knowledge. In our superficial and unfounded judgments, we'd consider a snake's poison as evil, forgetting that this very poison is a critical defense mechanism for that snake. So now I actually know two truths to this. I know the poison could kill me, but I also know that poison defends the snake and lets it grow a family and lets it flourish in life and grow, which is why it was created. So now where do I put it on the scale? Well, I'm panicked. I don't know where to put it on. I'm faltering between. If the snake is using it in self-defense, yeah, okay, I guess that's good. Oh, but brother, the self-defense is against you. Oh, that's not so good all of a sudden. So I don't know where to put it. I'm stuck. My scale is completely broken now. So it's not even concepts like two stars colliding that I've never seen before. Even if it's things that I've seen before, my judgment is so poor, my judgment is so limited that I need to reference it against something, and then I start panicking. And then I have a third condition to that, and then I say even that poison could be used for pharmaceutical reasons to cure anyone that has been done over by that snake. Oh, well, now I'm going right back to the good side again. Do you see what I'm getting at? Does everyone kind of get, inshallah, if that makes sense, أَفْرَحَ مَنْ صَلَّى عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِ مُحَمَّدٍ. So we can see all of a sudden that our judgment is limited. Forget evil for a second. Like I said, we're coming at this with a fresh pair of glasses, like we're getting tested now to see what can we see, what can't we see. We came into the room saying, I can infer everything. I know this is evil, I know this is good, I know this is right, I know this is wrong, I know. And I'm saying, okay, take those glasses off, put on a new set. Because what you thought looks like saying B on the wall, now actually says C. And you're like, oh, man. And they were like, actually, look at that. I've never read that script before in my life. That looks like Sanskrit. I've never seen that one before. You're like, okay, now you got a problem. Therefore, we can't rely on this tool of judgment that we have just by itself. We can't rely on this judgment that we've been using our whole life. Completely, of course. We make day-to-day decisions, but in terms of like seeing the big picture, seeing the world, no, we're limited. So we can't use it alone, exclusively, with 100% certainty to judge worldly affairs. We can't. We make good inferences, we make informed decisions, we consult, we try and make a good decision, but we can never be 100% sure we've made the perfect decision or the perfect judgment. It's not possible. So when we look back, therefore, at some disasters, or some situations, or some contexts that initially may have come across to our old set of glasses as saying bad, terrible, evil, awful, many years later actually manifests that actually no, there was goodness in that. And let me give you an example. We hear, for example, that a community in the time of Prophet Lut alayhi salam was like messed over, right, basically. And we know what their issue was at that time. Now if I was to say to you, for example, and I forget how they were kind of like dished out, but let's just say they drowned, for argument's sake. I can't remember, forgive me for my ill memory. Let's just say they all drowned. Allah created a flood like Nabi Noor and his community at that time, and everyone drowned. If I were to say to you now, oh, everyone drowned. You know, back in Southall, everyone drowned, there's a big flood. The canal came up, Sadiq's house, obliterated Sadiq, drowning. Oh, this is terrible. In the same way you hear that home Lut, the people of Lut, they've all been killed, they've all been whatever. No, this is terrible. Hundreds of years later, you then come to realize this home Lut taught us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this act that they were up to is awful. It's terrible. And we learn from it. So with your old set of glasses, you're like, no, this is definitely on the bad side. Hundreds of years later, with the new set of glasses, you're like, oh, this is good now. But in actual fact, we don't know. We don't know. Allah knows the most. Allah knows everything, sorry. We know a little bit. And even at that, it's nothing. So the main point we're trying to get at here is that we can't make judgments with our current tooling. It's not strong enough. It's not reliable enough. It would be ill-advised of any scientific professional to use an instrument that doesn't have a strong degree of success. You would not want to be operated on with a new scalpel that has not proven it can cut the skin without causing mass damage, for example. I know it's an awful example, but I'm trying to get practical, right? You wouldn't trust someone who's building the plane that you're going to get on and the engine specifically if that engine hasn't passed a load of tests. In the same way, just in 5 minutes, we've proven our judgment is limited. And our spiritual safety is more important than our physical safety, which is something we forget a lot. So I'm not going to trust that tool. I'm only going to trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these decisions. So this first conclusion we derive in this new set of glasses we're going to put on is that our relative judgment and limited knowledge are the real causes of our misunderstanding of universal events. We don't read them correctly. We don't know how to read them. We're not trained to read them. We can guess. We can have half-decent guesses, but it's not enough. The more we study the interrelationship between events, the more we'll recognize the limited scope of our judgments. And let me give you again another practical example, because someone would then say, if there's someone from the Iraqi community here, for example, they'll say, oh, Sadiq, the removal of Saddam was a definite good. And I think a lot of Shia would say, yeah, of course, we managed to go to Ziyarah again of Abi Abdullah al-Hussain after how many years of having to cut a limb here, cut a limb there. How is this not goodness? How is this not perfection? Now, I'm not giving a political opinion here, but I just want to show you how the debate opens up. Even amongst Iraqi Shias, my own friends, we've been chilling out and there's debates going across the table. One says it's the best thing that we've got rid of Saddam. The other says we've got no infrastructure in our country. It's being run by crooks worse than Saddam. At least Saddam made it clear and he killed everyone, so everyone knew he was a tyrant, but he kept the roads running. These guys can't even fix a pothole, for example. They can't even get water running into Mosul. And you see a huge debate. So something so obvious, Saddam's been removed, there's now a whole plethora of judgments. People have different understandings of it. So we can't rely on this to cast a judgment over world affairs. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so clear about this in Surah Al-Isra. And this is what I find fascinating, right? When we think, and this is myself a million times before anyone else, when we think we've become something, oh, I studied, I read this book, I go to this center, I read this book, let me tell you about this book, all this kind of stuff I come out with you guys on, right? And I think I'm something all of a sudden. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just rationalizes us so quickly. You think you've seen, oh, but I've got so much experience, I've traveled the world, I've seen suffering, I'm in geopolitics, I'm in natural disaster relief, I'm there. Okay, no problem. But remember this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And mankind has not been given of knowledge except a little. Allah's not messing about. There's some of these lines, obviously we know the Quran has so many layers of depth, right? But some of these lines are so clear cut. You think you're a big man, you think you've learned everything, you've seen everything, you think you've studied everything. And mankind has not been given of knowledge except a little. إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. So am I going to trust your judgment? Or am I going to trust his judgment? Allah's judgment. I know which side is forever true. I know that our judgment is limited. Therefore, we should avoid rushing to jump to conclusions about this is an evil event, but this one isn't. This one's evil, this one's right, relax. You've been given qalila, just a little bit of knowledge. Trust Allah that everything's working as it should. And you will learn over time. And if it's to be that you'll find out the perfect wisdom behind it, it will be. And if it's not, it's okay. So that's the first thing we just want to say. We can't trust that tool of our judgment, etc. Okay, like I said, new set of classes, that's point one. These points that we're going to cover are not necessarily the most perfectly linked lecture in the world, right? This is really just something I'm trying to present different points in a very chilled out manner so you guys can string them all together, inshallah. The first point we now know. The second point, this concept of evil itself. It's known as theodicy in theology, by the way, if you're interested. Theodicy. You can research on it and it goes back to Plato and it's a massively debated topic, hugely debated topic. Be you a Jew, a Christian, a Muslim, atheist, doesn't matter. Theodicy is a huge topic. And it's the vindication of divine providence in relation to the existence of evil. How does this divine concept, God, creator, whatever you want to call him, relate to the existence of evil? That's the name of the debate, and it's called theodicy. So, how can evil come about? Theoretically. There's one of two situations. Either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala couldn't prevent it, even though he is all-powerful, or Allah did not choose to prevent it. So first scenario, Allah couldn't prevent it, even though he's able to. And we believe, of course, he'd be able to. If he wanted, he could just remove this suffering or issues in the world, right? We know that. So it can't be the first point. Therefore, it must be the second. Allah did not choose to prevent it. There was wisdom behind him not preventing it. Now that is something that will make us feel a little bit unsettled initially as we say it. Did my God choose to create evil? Is that what we're talking about? Just hold that thought. Don't let it get to you. We're building a theoretical case. Okay? So, how do we reconcile this? We could pose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had four possible options regarding creation. Not to create anything. We know that isn't the case because he's created stuff. And that contradicts his being, his omnipotence, the evidence in his power and his wisdom. He's created stuff, right? So it's clearly not, he wouldn't create anything. Second option, to create only that which is absolutely good and perfect. Again, this is illogical because this contradicts the absolute good and perfection is in God alone. If all of us turned into perfect humans, we'd all be gods. That's not even possible because there can only be one infinite God. The moment you add a second, you've now limited the scope. So you can't be unlimited and infinite by definition. So it can't be the second point. Third, Allah would create only that which is absolutely evil. That's a bit daft. It's a bit illogical. Probably don't need to go into that for too much. But if this merciful Lord and the only source of mercy and every good who cares for all his creation, why would he only create those which is evil? So it can't be the third point. So the only point remaining could be Allah creates variety within creation with differing capacities for goodness. Allah creates variety within creation with differing capacities for goodness. I'm going to repeat this one more time so it really soaks in. Allah creates variety within creation, so different types of creation, that each have differing levels of competence, of ability, of goodness. Does that make sense, that last point? Do we agree that that's what Allah has done? He's created different things, each of which have different positive traits, different levels of goodness. Yeah? Why? Or what's the proof? How can we understand this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the entire universe. And He allotted to each of these different creations certain things, certain traits, almost like shared out the dividends and shares between all of these different creations, according to their different capacities. Remember, last week we said justice is not equality, and equality is not a prerequisite of justice. Equality is when we said you have someone 5 foot and you have someone 6 foot, and they both want to look over the fence, which is 5'5". So you give a 3 foot stall to the 5 foot guy, you give a 3 foot stall to the 6 foot guy. The 6 foot guy can still see. Happy days. The 5 foot guy, he's now 5'3". The wall is 5'5", he can't see. But there's equal, it's equality. No, equality is one thing, justice is not equality, because that's still unfair on this young chap. Or old chap, I don't know, it depends. So Allah distributes based on His wisdom in a just way. And it's humans that then see this and start to cast our own judgment to say, oh Allah, you distributed this in an unfair way. At that point, we're already challenging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom, the way that He's distributed things in the world. We're not talking about evil yet, so please hold on to that thought. We're saying the way Allah has created the universe, from that point we're already saying you're creating it in an unjust way, Allah. We're already challenging Him. Why didn't you give this person a left arm? Why didn't you give this person a that? Why didn't you give this creation that? Why didn't you give that country this? Why didn't you give that country rainfall? So on and so on and so on and so on. We're already casting judgment on Allah's justice. But we've already said we can't do that because our ability to judge is useless, right? It's so easy for me to look at Eritrea in what, northeast, Eastern Africa, if I'm not mistaken. Someone correct me. Is that right? East Africa, Northeast Africa, Eritrea? Let's say Somalia, right? East Africa, Sudan, Congo, more towards Central Africa, Central Eastern Africa, etc. These countries that are burning hot, barely rains, so much poverty. And they're like, Ya Allah, actually, you made a mistake. You need to give more rain to Sudan, please. We've already said that my judgment is flawed. So either, at that point, I go, my judgment is better, or I trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's judgment. Again, we're building from first principles, because we have to do this, because these amazing, lovely arguments that the atheists bring to us, and that our brain and shaitan tries to concoct in our head, sometimes, as we mentioned to brother a few weeks ago, the question itself is wrong. We're trying to show how the question itself is wrong, but you need to go back to first principles to get there. So everything's been created in a way for its specific purpose, with divine wisdom, with divine justice from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Constrained by time and space, because we can't all do everything. We each have a purpose in our own right. For example, if I say that you've got a fighter jet and a commercial jet, they're both planes. They both fly in the air, they both travel at speed, they both go from A to B through the air. One is fat, one is thin. You'd laugh at me if I said this is unjust. Why? Because the fighter jet being thin has a very specific reason for being thin. It needs to be faster than the commercial jet. It needs to carry certain weaponry. Whereas the commercial jet needs to be massive, fat, the A380, 2 floors, to carry all of our loving Emirati individuals that want to go give money to that side of the world, and we're all guilty of it, stopping on the way to Ziyarah, just like this sound coming above. The commercial jet needs different attributes, different qualities than a fighter jet. And guess what? The creator of planes, whoever that institution is, Airbus, Boeing, whatever, they say, yeah, in our understanding, the commercial jet needs these traits, The fighter jet needs these traits. What's the big deal? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates the universe with divine wisdom, saying this needs that, this needs that, this needs that. Not equality. Because that's what, if you have equality, the fighter jet is now as slow as a commercial jet. Is as nimble, which isn't very nimble, as a commercial jet. It doesn't make sense. So in Allah's infinite wisdom, He creates in the most just way. He creates in a way with absolute wisdom that you and I are unable to even try and figure out. Because on the one hand, someone could say, have you been to the rainforest in the Amazon? It's so humid, man. It's so tough. They'd be like, oh, Allah, you're so unjust. So humid. Lift the humidity. Let them have nice British springs. 15 degrees, just a light jacket. Everyone's happy. What would that happen to the ecosystem? We get stressed about trees being cut down in the Amazon, right? But if we change the climate in order to satisfy that situation, then we're not so stressed. Until we do it, and they're like, oh, actually, that one didn't work. Allah, let's try another one. Let me figure it out with another one. And we try, and we try, and we try. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. So I'm re-emphasizing that first point and linking it to the second point. And Plato has a very interesting way that he describes this. And this is a very weird way to explain it, but let's just go with it for argument's sake. Killing with a sword is not evil. What? Immediately on our scale, killing, I'm gone to my negative side. Immediately, that's just what our brain does. So I'm saying, put on your fresh pair of glasses, okay? The new set of glasses that was like, you know what? I haven't got a clue. So let me just see what this person has to say, and then, Allahu Akbar. Plato says, killing with a sword is not evil. Because it is the result of the sharpness of the blade. You go to the creator of a sword, what's he told to do? Well, Sadiq, listen, you're a sword maker. Make this sharp, yeah? Make it super sharp, so that when I strike, it kills. Okay, I've done my job. He said he went to the battle, he struck someone and it worked. I deserve some praise, right? I created it. I did exactly what the job desk said. So I see it from one perspective. You saw the killing. You're like, well, that was hideous. So you see it as negative. So now we've got our fight on this balance. We get rid of that balance. We've now realized it's a useless tool. So get rid of it from your head. That's the main thing I want to get across to us today. Get rid of this old set of glasses that constantly had you comparing to your scale of justice. We don't understand justice well enough. We haven't got the tools to do it, so get rid of it. Killing with a sword is not evil because it is the result of the sharpness of the blade, the strength of the one who slays, that person's boldness, and the vulnerability of a neck. Imagine that all in one line. The sharpness of the sword, so credit to the sword maker, the strength of the one who slayed, credit to the guy who did the job. And let's say it's the person that deserved it, right? I'm not trying to, we're in the world of theory here, but just in case anyone feels a bit sensitive about the topic, the guy deserved it, whatever. The person's boldness and the vulnerability of the neck, subhanAllah, the creativity of Allah to create a neck that is so vital yet so subtle. So subtle. All these evidence perfection. The only thing that might be imagined to be evil is the loss of life of the deceased that results. This illustrates that evil does not exist as an entity. This illustrates, vital point, this illustrates that evil does not exist as an entity. What does that mean? If I say to you, what's this? Everyone in the room says, a mug. If you don't say it's a mug, you're wrong. Right? Everyone says, this is a mug. If we see that strike, and I say, what do you see? We don't hear one word. Some of you will shout evil. The sword maker shouts greatness. The biologist says, look at the amazingness of the neck. Everyone's got a different opinion. The mug exists. Hence we can identify it. Hence we can explain it. Hence we can talk about it. It's a materialistic thing that we can observe, we can sense. Evil doesn't practically exist. It's subjective. Everyone's got a different view on it. It's a debate. It's a concept. It's a construct. Draw me evil. Create me evil. Show me evil. Even if Asad were to go and show me evil today, we're walking down the street, see someone get robbed. Like, Sadiq, look, I saw evil. I'm like, yeah, bro, he's stealing from the billionaire that just robbed a bank and he's giving the money back to the poor person. Oh, sorry, man. Didn't realize that. Is the point making sense? That this question, why does evil exist? We're saying, hold on a second. Let's go back to first principles. Number one, who on earth are we to try and make that judgment? And number two, what even is evil? Can we even define it? Like as a group? If we're even going to have this debate, does it even exist? Let's just define our terminology. What is evil? That's Allah alayhim. Yeah, some good answers there. That's what I'm saying, you know, as we said last week, we have the ability to ascertain absolute sometimes, and even if that is guided by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, right? I love that answer. That's gonna be used in a lecture one day. That's beautiful. So this concept is so important. And you know, our dear brother asked the question last week or 2 weeks ago when he said, you know, how would I respond to the question of where is God? And I said, look, the question's wrong. The same way that you can't say how many wickets are left when Watford are playing United. It doesn't make sense. The question is wrong. The same way, is this evil? What is evil? Maybe not the question is wrong, but at least let's define our terminology so I can give you a judgment. And if the guy can't describe evil, from whose perspective? So all of a sudden now the concept of evil is now up in the air. We've kind of destroyed it. What was and dead certainty in our head, where Sky News are like, evil is going around the world because of the Islamics and blah, 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 and all this good stuff. Because of this, that, and the other, we're now saying, what even is evil? We're not being naive, right? We can recognize horrible things that take place. We're going to come on to that. But as a concept, it can't just be brandished out like candy. Evil is just like, yeah, everyone take a little bit, everyone see it, everyone see what I'm seeing. No, it doesn't work that way. Some define evil, and they say, look, evil contradicts goodness. So let's try and make some progress on therefore what evil is. If we know it, this concept maybe exists, like how can we describe it? So some say evil contradicts goodness. And some say, and they define it as this, evil is the absence of goodness. Just keep those two concepts in your head and we'll go full circle. However, it is impossible to suggest that evil is a good function in However, it's impossible to suggest that evil... Sorry, forgive me. This is why this topic is very delicate. However, it is possible to suggest that evil and good function in tandem rather than in conflict. So you know the example that we just mentioned about Plato? We're saying that the sword striking, someone would see goodness there, someone would see evil there. So we can potentially say we see good and evil interacting in the same time, space. Right? We cannot comprehend generosity until we witness neediness. So let that moment sink in. We cannot comprehend generosity until we witness neediness. So what's an example of that? If we were to go turn off all the lights right now, every single one, and we're in complete darkness, someone's going to say, turn on the light. Why? Because we've experienced the hall with light, and now we're experiencing darkness. And if you were to say on which side of the scale is that darkness, you say that's more on the evil side. When we arrive and the hall is prepared and there's light, and there's extra halo light, and all this good stuff, that's on the side of goodness. So we can only comprehend goodness, we can only comprehend evil once we've experienced goodness, because it's the absence of goodness. So if I were to give a university student £500,000 on the general assumption that students are broke, typically, inshallah, we can all get over that moment in our life because it is tricky sometimes. If I were to give them 500k, they'd be like, wow, this is amazing. Because relative to what they have, which is the absence of that money, they're like, oh, goodness has arrived. I've got 500k. Only because they've realised what being broke is like. When you're trying to get a meal deal from Tesco on sale, that's the life, that's the hustle, right? Really gone off tuna sweet corn sandwich, like it's just not great. But anyway, only because they've experienced the absence of that, they can now appreciate its existence, and the vice versa occurs, right? People bearing patience and tolerance cannot be understood unless there is a calamity or an atrocity. If everyone's living happy for their whole life, no challenge, nothing, when will they need to experience patience? They don't. They don't realise it. But you take away the 500k that you once gave to them, now he's got a challenge, because now it's been taken from him. Now he can feel the absence of goodness. Is that necessarily evil? That's a question. Let's come back to our question now, so the hands up. Broke student, struggling to pay his tuition fees, struggling to live out,
I now give him £500,000. Is that on the side of goodness or evil? Hands up for goodness. No, we don't have a scale anymore. You failed the question. We don't have a scale anymore. Anyway, let's go with it, right? Let's say put your hand up for goodness, because guess what was coming next? I now take it from him. How many put your hands up to say that's goodness that I've taken it away from him? Probably no one.
It depends on the reason.
There we go. So we've come full circle. Inshallah, this point is now starting to land. Because maybe Allah takes that 500k away from him because he was about to spend it on gambling and get himself away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example. Or to leave his parents suddenly because he doesn't need his parents anymore, which takes him away from Allah, etc., etc. So exactly, right? Never, ever, ever let someone ask you, is this good or evil? No. We shouldn't need to fall into that situation. Yes, we can be like, probably is on the better side, but the better answer is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, I've only been given a little bit of knowledge. Why don't we look at the fuller picture? We need to be wiser with these questions. Not just questions from the outside, these questions are coming from within ourselves. Shaitan is whispering all the time, all the time. The smarter we get, the tougher the whispers, the more complex, the more subtle they get. You know how easy it is for shaitan when you're walking past the pub and you enjoy drinking, but you know it's haram, you're there, just go and have another pint. That's like the classic shaitan whisper that we all kind of think about. There's a woman walking across the street, yeah, have a look, no worries. That classic shaitan whisper, inshallah we can get past that. The tougher shaitan whisper is when he starts putting these doubts in your head. He starts to put this shak into your head. You're doing goodness, you pray every single day. On time, awwal waqt. Sadiq, did you do 2 rakats or 1 rakat? Well, that was a subtle one. Well done, shaitan, you've wised up. Congrats. Give him a slap, let him be on his way. And next time he comes, Sadiq, you see that Daesh, that's a bit evil. What happened to your merciful Lord? Thank you, shaitan. I'm going to pass you over now. Next one. We've got to remember that these whisperings are not just coming from outside, they're coming from within. So we need to be ready for them. So when this question comes, be wiser. Shaitan, listen, I only know a little bit. I'm going to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who knows everything. I'm going to go to his guides who know everything through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom that he's given to them. And I'm going to make an informed judgment, but Allahu a'lam, and may I be guided. None of this yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Life is not as simple as yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, not all the time. Go on.
If we just claim to say evil's not an entity, how would we classify shaitan?
Amazing. Let's come full circle to that, inshallah. But keep in mind this whole concept of anything that we could say is bad, tough, suffering, or whatever, is a moment to train, is a moment to improve, is a moment to journey. But we'll come to that, inshallah. Okay, did that last point make sense for everyone? That this concept of goodness versus evil, we only can appreciate what goodness is. We can only fathom, I guess, what evil is, or this concept of evil maybe, when goodness is actually absent, and that's the void. Does that concept make sense for everyone? Yeah? If so, Afrahaman sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay, so that's 3 points that we've mentioned. And again, like I said, it's not like the best formulated lecture. It's really like a bit of a, university discussion where we're trying to feed points and then you can go away and reflect on them. And just to say, this is something that's going to take maybe days, months, weeks, years of reflection. All right? And I highly encourage reading around this topic. Highly, highly recommend it. And I'll give you all the sources. But please, take this one seriously. We're just giving the surface of it to make you start to think. The more we think around our faith, the stronger we get at it, if we're guided in the right way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeated, he says, وَأَفَلَا تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Do you not even reflect? Do you not even ponder? Do you not even think? Put your phone under your pillow and just for 20 minutes, 5 minutes, just think about this concept a bit more. Start to generate these questions. What about shaitan? What about this? Don't let it affect you. Ask the question. Seek. Ask those who know. And let you be guided. Read more, read more, read more. What we're giving you right now, I'm giving you the very basic surface, the basic surface that I'm reflecting on, right? And there's layers beyond, and as I said, my teacher sent through his analysis, and I was like, wow, it's like a whole new realm. It's incredible. But anyway, that's for another time. So let's come to a 4th point now. Who created the evil that everyone seems to be talking about? Where did it come from? How did it come about? How did this absence of goodness come about? Because all you could say to me is, look, Sadiq, you're just playing semantics right now, yeah? You're saying it's not evil. Bro, it's absence of goodness. Why did Allah create an absence of goodness for this small child? Why? It's a good question, right? You call me out in semantics, so let's explain it. We used the example earlier, and I think this one will hit home very quickly, but let's just go through it. A father goes to the shop to go get milk from the shop for breakfast. As he crosses the road, he's hit by a car and dies. On the face of it, we all say, oh, this is such a tragedy. Ya Allah, why did you do this? The wife of the husband is like, oh, Ya Allah, why did you do this? Why did you take my husband so fast away from me? The children are like, oh, why did you take our father so fast away from us? All his friends, oh, this is so unfair, etc., etc. Everyone starts to blame everyone starts to blame only God and nothing else. God becomes the center of attention in these kind of moments. True or not, in a time of calamity, the phrase, oh, for God's sake, is always ready on the tip of the tongue. Doesn't matter if it was you that was completely behind it. Doesn't matter if you crashed. Oh, for God's sake. I don't know why. Poor God, man. Gets the blame for everything. But when something good happens, yeah, it's me. It's all down to me. It's all down to the doctor. When it's for issues, oh, for God's sake. Imagine you get given £1,000 randomly. Tell me how many people in the world go, oh, for God's sake, this is great. No one says that. It doesn't make sense. You thank the person that's giving it to you. But when it comes to an issue, oh, for God's sake. Do you see how we've been in our worldview, in this society, tuned to blame this concept of God just through parlance of things? It's incredible how subtle it is. That's what I'm saying, we come at this from a fresh pair of glasses. So, what happens to this bichara, this poor guy? Do you guys say bichara in Urdu as well? Right, cool. Just making sure. What happens to this poor guy when they're crossing the road and he dies when he's buying milk? So many potential situations. The man didn't look when he was crossing the road. You're still going to say, for God's sake? You're going to say, come on, man, look next time. The driver of the car didn't look when he didn't look whilst he was driving. The road had a pothole which the council didn't attend to for days. The car hit it, swerved into the guy. Now it's the council's fault. The driver actually wanted to kill the pedestrian for whatever reason. The person crossing wanted to commit suicide, so he ran in front of the car. So many different options, right? So why is it so quickly that when it comes to this absence of goodness, this evil, if you want to use our old terminology, that Allah is always the center of blame? Are there not many other factors that could exist? I'm not saying Allah's out of it yet. Well, but for our detective mode, we're not saying Allah's out of it yet. Is there not many other situations that could have occurred where Allah is just not at fault? The insurance claim is not going to say Allah was at fault. No, the guy was drunk and he hit the guy. That's not Allah's fault. But we're accustomed to think to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this starts the conversation of free will. Fine, the guy was drunk. The father was innocent. Of course we're going to blame the drunk guy. No one in the room would deny that. That would be a fair, rational understanding. The guy was 10 times above the limit. He swerved into the guy and the poor father was killed just doing a no. He was a mu'min. He was a beautiful man. And now at the second level, we still go, oh, Ya Allah, why? And this is where this discussion of free will comes in. Ya Allah, why didn't you stop it from happening? He was a mu'min. Stop it from happening. He was serving the community. Why didn't you stop it? Now we see Allah interfering in the day-to-day versus free will. Determinism, which I think you asked a few weeks ago, right, about determinism. And inshallah, we're going to discuss that next week. Because this opens up a whole new can of worms. Beautiful worms. Makes us reflect. Why didn't Allah stop it? Why didn't Allah stop Daesh in Baghdad when they started coming? I remember I was there at the time. There was 70 kilometers out in 2013, January. December and 2014, January. I remember we were stuck in Baghdad, in Kalbamiyya, and you just saw tanks and military going the other way. What's going on? And we got to the tafsish, the security point. What's going on? Oh, Daesh are coming. Oh, okay. Just like normal day for Iraq. Little did we know, just months later what then happened, right? Why didn't Allah stop it? Why didn't Allah stop the demise of your loved one? Why didn't Allah stop me from failing my first university module exam? It was my fault. I went to the Watford game on the Sunday and the exam was on the Tuesday, and it was the best match I've ever been to in my life. So maybe I was a bit happy, right? So I didn't ride bys, and I definitely probably didn't for the next few days. I just watched the match over and over and over again. My fault, not Allah's fault. But why didn't Allah stop it? Even though it's my fault, if Allah is so merciful, why doesn't He stop it? Why doesn't He stop the assault on Baghdad? Why didn't He stop the bombing in Afghanistan just 2-3 weeks ago against the Shia mosque? Why? And this is where the whole discussion of free will versus determinism comes in, and inshallah we'll come on to that next week. But it's something that we want to think about in the back of our head. But again, we realise in these situations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given and created in a certain way. Each of us, everything, with the right share, with the right dividends, with the right goodness that it needs. Now, if you look at each of these events that go on in the world, how many of those come down to human malfunction rather than ill creation? Daesh, is that Allah? Or is that humans who put pride and arrogance and fear above everything else? The bombs in Afghanistan, same story. The poverty in this country, same story. Someone said, oh, but Sadiq, those are all very obvious, war-led issues. We know that comes from man. What about starvation? I'll ask you this. Is there not enough food in the world? Has Allah not created enough things for us to create food from in the world, for the whole world to thrive? No one, as far as I've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, and please call me out, right? I haven't seen any NGO say there isn't enough food in the world for everyone to be satiated. What we do here is that there is so much waste in the world that you could take that waste and it would feed a lot of those who are starving. I don't know whether it's all, but a lot of those who are starving. From my household as much as anyone else's. So is that Allah's issue? Or is that creation's issue? Besides, there's not enough water in the world. 70%, is that right for geographers in the room? 70% of the world of the earth is water. Do we not know how to purify water from the ocean? Of course we know. So is it an issue of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not giving us the ration? Or is it mankind being awful in itself again and again and again and again? We've got enough to put burn billions in seconds as rockets go to the sky so that Elon and his friends can go have a good time and Jeff Bezos and his mates can have a good time. But we haven't got enough cash to ensure everyone's fed, to ensure everyone's not thirsty, to ensure everyone has an education. There's more than enough cash in the world. So is that Allah's issue or is that man's issue? So many of these situations now, we're like, actually, it's a shortcoming. It's the absence of food that these guys are feeling, which is a creation of man's inability to ration correctly for the world, because we're selfish. Allah's no longer in the picture. Could Allah stop it? Yes. Will He? Discussion for next week. Determinism, free will, etc., etc. So we're going to get there. Now you may then come to the third point. Okay, Sadiq, the first one you said was war. I get it. Daesh are messed up. The second one you're saying, starvation. I get it. Bezos just wants to spend money on his own ships and he doesn't own a spaceship and he doesn't want to feed everyone. I get it. Sadiq, go on, here's one for you. What about natural disasters? And you see them pipe up in their chair. What about natural disasters, huh? You're not questioning me. You're questioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So firstly, humble a little bit, sit back down, relax. We're going to finish on this week, so I think we're out of time. Right, come to the end. What about natural disasters? What about the tsunami that hit Thailand back in 2003? I think this time, roughly, Boxing Day, 2003. 18 years ago. I remember it so clearly as well. Like everyone's watching those videos as they came out. And you're like, what on earth is that big wave? And what's it doing there? That's not man in the background creating it. So what's going on there? These earthquakes that cause it. These avalanches. What's going on? That's not man. What's happening? Tough question. Remember what we said at the beginning. Illa qalila. We've only got a tiny bit of knowledge. Allah's told us. Big Bang happens. Let's say, for example, Big Bang happens, and whatever existence that maybe there was before completely burns, because like the whole world burns all of a sudden, right? Whatever existed back then, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up right now, right? So let's say the Big Bang happened, and there was some person around at that time, and there was some creature, there was something, everything burns. Who knows? Everyone at the time would have said, this Big Bang is awful. Thank God it's galaxies away from us. Thank God it's not us. What does it create? Us. Natural disaster. Was there something that came out of it the other side, but the generation at that time that saw it didn't see what was going to come later? I was going to say, does it fit on our scale? But I'm pretty sure now you all would have said, I don't want to be the guy that judges on that scale, because I know I'm going to get it wrong. Natural disaster. Nabi Noor gets on his ark. People get flooded. I'm not going to get involved in that one, actually. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's adala, He knows best. there was reasons for what happened. Maybe that's the mechanics of the earth. But let's even take this further and say, you know what, you're just trying to get out of it. Earthquakes. Do we know that they happen? Yes. Do we know that the earth moves in a certain way, etc., with its core and its crust and tectonic plates, all that good stuff? Yes. Could we create houses of better quality that can withstand earthquakes? If we can send ships to the sky safely and orbit for months and then come back down safely, I'm sure the same way that China built buildings that were able to wobble with small earthquakes, we'll be able to build better infrastructure using the intellect that Allah gave us so that these wouldn't be as drastic as they then come about. True or not, we could do that. It's in our ability. Allah has given us that ability. But guess what? Mankind's selfish needs, again. Oh, but couldn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create a world where you didn't need to have the tectonic plates? At what point do we recognize that when we get a little bit smarter, there's another logical answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's adala? Illa qalila. We've only got a tiny bit of knowledge. Do you not think Allah's planned every single thing perfectly? Each time someone brings up another point, there's another rebuttal, there's another rebuttal, there's another rebuttal. At some point you need to sit down and say, you know what, Allah, you're absolutely right. Illa qalila. I have only accepted a little, and that came from you in the first place. And in the same way in that first discussion on Tawheed, we said we get to a point where we've got to jump over the barrier. There's a leap of faith. There's a point where you go, you know what? My logical arguments have run out. And I've felt you. I've experienced you, Allah. I've seen your justice. If we're able to get to that point and we jump over that fence, this is similarly when it comes to Adala, we've got to take that leap of faith at some point. Now you may even say, oh, but Sadiq, Daesh, when's Allah's justice going to prevail? If you believe in Qiyamah, if you believe in Ma'ad, if you believe in the everlasting next life, know that Allah's got it covered. No issues. Relax.
What's not hard, sorry? Resurrection.
Like next life, resurrection. Yeah, exactly. All of these concepts are used for the next life, it's eternal, etc. Relax. Allah's got it. But when you don't believe in the next life, when you don't believe it's eternal, when you don't believe Allah is just, when you don't believe that Allah sees everything, when you don't believe that He recognizes what's going on, you will struggle to be comfortable with that concept. And therefore you come back and say, oh, I'm not sure Allah is just. So we need the essential understanding of Tawheed in order to jump over this Adala fence, which is the next one to get over. Because you know what Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, you know what Saddam Hussein, you know what so-and-so, Fulan, Hitler, whoever you are, there's going to be a day where you're going to get it. And you're going to get it bad. You're going to get it based on Allah's qadr, whatever He decrees on His justice. And inshallah we leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that point. And just very lastly, I'll mention this. And I'm not a fan of mocking opposing ideologies, but sometimes, after you've kind of spent all this time for like how 90% of our discussion today, focusing, improving intellectually and intelligently our approach and our understanding, sometimes it's nice to look on the other side and just see the ridiculous nature of the question from the questioner, so you can understand, is this someone that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in the Quran as a jahil? And if so, qalu salam. Just say salam to them. If they're ignorant, qalu salam. Just leave them, right? They're not worth your time. But be peaceful. When these atheists who concoct this question of, if God is so merciful, why does He create evil? After we've gone through this entire proof, just remember in the back of your head, hey atheist, if God is so merciful, then why does He create evil? I thought you were of the opinion that God doesn't exist. So when did you start to accept God? And since when did you get to start to describe His mercy? You don't believe in Him. You don't understand His mercy. I believe in Him. I've studied His mercy. It's on my terms, based on my teachings, that we define Allah, we try to define Allah's mercy. And my understanding of His mercy yields me to these conclusions. So you can talk about God and mercy, but if you don't believe in Him, number one, how are you going to define His mercy, number two? And number three, of course, if you've come up with your own idea and understanding, yeah, maybe evil will exist in your world. That's your worldview. But you didn't believe in a God 5 minutes ago, and you definitely didn't believe He was merciful. So yeah, guess what? Your understandings are limited, so why am I going to spend time with you? Why do I always have to pander to their line of questioning and thought? when I've got a whole encyclopedia to get through first that gives me the answers. Away with them. قَالُوا سَلَامًا, just leave them. But if that question niggles at something inside, go and study, go and reflect. أَفَلَا تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And inshallah, if they now acknowledge God, you can bring them along. Right? But if they're still just doing it for the sake of doing it, that's probably the case. We would have gone on to discuss, so what can we actually benefit from these difficult challenges that arise? What's the, fine if we accept that there is an absence of goodness in the world. What benefit does it do for us? What do we learn from it? Inshallah, we can cover that in the coming weeks. Very heavy session, as I said, maybe a little bit complex, and forgive me if I've not explained it correctly. And as ever, please forgive me if I've incorrectly mentioned anything. I'll maybe just share one line of Quran just to finish with. And this is that line with regards to... There's actually a few, actually. How much time do we have? Are we completely out? We've got, yeah? I just want to mention a few lines of Quran because I've realised we've spent a lot of time kind of sharing a bit of the logic. But this is for your benefit, for you guys to write down, and this is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this word of Allah is haqq. In Surah Yunus, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in verse 44, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَظْلِمُ النَّاسِ شَيْئًا وَلَكِنَّ النَّاسَ أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. Really important line. Indeed, Allah does not wrong the people at all, but it's the people who are wronging themselves. Again, Allah's super clear here. If we're then nervous about the justice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in so many different ayat of Quran, but let's be specific. Surah Al-Mudaththir, 74, verse 38. كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ رَهِينًا. Every soul, for what it has earned, will be retained. It's all going to come back to you one day. كُلُّ أَمْرٍ بِمَا كَسَبَ رَهِينًا. And this is Surah Tur, verse 21, so 52-21. Every person for what he has earned is retained. So many times Allah reminds us of His justice. You're going to see so much in life, but don't worry, I've got it. Relax. Don't try and become me. Chill. Trust. Adala in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You'll only see justice all of a sudden. And if you don't see it for dunya, 100% Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is handling it in akhirah. Don't worry about it. Leave that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does anyone have any questions or any things that they wanted to...
Wait, you know the statement that you said that we only have a little bit of knowledge? Where did you get that from? Sorry, I missed the first one.
No worries. It's a line of Quran. Let me get you the reference.
No, that's alright.
No, I've got it here. 2 seconds. Surah Al-Isra, so that's Surah number 17, verse number 85. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And mankind has not been given of knowledge except a little. 1785. Al-Isra, 1785. Anyone else? Anything else? No? Inshallah. Again, forgive me, this is a very, very tricky topic. I hope it was a bit clearer than last week. If you would like to read more into it, if you find this interesting, just drop me a message or come and grab me and I can show you some of the resources to read from. Reading requires investment. Investment in Allah will always be returned. So don't worry about it being maybe a little bit pricey initially. Allah's got it covered. So, inshallah. وآخر الدعوان أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلي يا ربي على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you, Brother Sadiq, again for another informative session. We'll now have Abbas Damani recite ziyarat for us all. So, salawat. Allahumma salli ala.
No, Ahmed Raza.
بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سلام على آل ياسين السلام عليك يا داعي الله ورباني آياته السلام عليك يا باب الله وديان دينه السلام عليك يا خليفة الله وناصر حقه السلام عليك يا حجة الله ودليل إرادته السلام عليك يا تالي كتاب الله وترجمانا. السلام عليك في آناء ليلك وأطراف نهارك. السلام عليك يا بقية الله في أرضه. السلام عليك يا ميثاق الله الذي أخذه ووكذا. السلام عليك يا وعد الله الذي ضمنا. السلام عليك أيها العلم المنسوب والعلم المسبوب والغوث والرحمة الواسعة وعدا غير مكذوب. السلام عليك حين تقوم. السلام عليك حين تقود. السلام عليك حين تقرأ وتبين. السلام عليك حين تصلي وتكنت. السلام عليك حين تركع وتسجد. السلام عليك حين تحلل وتكبر. السلام عليك حين تحمد وتستغفر. السلام عليك حين تصبح وتمسي. السلام عليك في الليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى. السلام عليك أيها الإمام المأمون. السلام عليك أيها المقدم المأمول. السلام عليك بجوامع السلام. أشهدك يا مولاي أني أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله لا حبيب إلا هو وأهله. وأشهدك يا مولاي أن عليا أمير المؤمنين حجته والحسن حجته والحسين حجته وعلي بن الحسين حجته ومحمد بن علي حجته وجعفر بن محمد حجته وموسى بن جعفر حجته وعلي بن موسى حجته ومحمد بن علي حجته وعلي بن محمد حجته والحسن بن علي حجته. وأشهد أنك حجة الله أنتم الأول والآخر وأن رجعتكم حق لا ريب فيها يوم لا ينفع نفسا إيمانها لم تكن آمنت من قبل أو كسبت في إيمانها خيرا. وأن الموت الحق وأن ناكرا ونكيرا حق. وأشهد أن نشر حق والبعث حق وأن الصراط حق والمرصاد حق والميزان حق والحشر حق والحساب حق والجنة والنار حق والوعد والوعد بهما حق. يا مولاي شقيا من خالفكم وسعدا من أطاعكم فاشهد على ما أشهدتك عليه وأن ولي لك بريء من عدوك. فالحق ما رزيتموه والباطل ما أسخطتموه والمعروف ما أمرتم به والمنكر ما نحيتم عنه. فنفسي مؤمنة بالله وحده لا شريك له وبرسوله وبأمير المؤمنين وبكم يا مولاي أولكم وآخركم ونصرتي معدة لكم ومودتي خالصة لكم. آمين آمين. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد.
السلام عليك يا غريب الغربة السلطان يا أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان، ألمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل مخرجه وزهوره. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. زوال فرج. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
اللهم صل على محمد. Inshallah, next week's session, 6th of January 2017 starts.